The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is measurement and metrics, the need and how to implement them. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Sameer Nathan, Project Manager Testing Services at Wipro. Mr. Sameer Nathan has 12 plus years of experience in software testing. He has experience in product as well as services company. Mr. Nathan is exposed to the domains of retail e-commerce, retail pharmacy, business process analysis and improvisation, documentation and e-learning, chain management, repository management, audit and advisory section of financial services, etc. Currently, he is working as Project Manager Testing Services at Wipro. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker, Mr. Sameer Nathan. Over to you, Mr. Nathan.
Thank you, Mohini. Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's seminar on measurements and metrics in software testing, the need and how to implement them. So the basic idea of today's presentation is to give an understanding of why is it that we need to measure and how to implement a matrix into your system. Just to set up the whole context clearly, since the industry has various standards and an exponentially vast number of metrics, we will not be able to go through the entire details of all the different metrics available. However, some of the generally used metrics will be touched upon in this presentation. Coming to our agenda. So, why do we need to measure? The first question, followed by what is it that we need to measure? How is it that we'll measure and present it out, which becomes your matrix? A definition of some of the general metrics, which is the process of how to implement a matrix such that everyone is aware of it in detail. Some of the industry standard metrics, and an example of how you can go about creating and proposing it within your system if the need arises. Everybody has this question, why measure? That's a question which normally people, when they keep growing up within the organization, it's upon different kinds of matrices, different kinds of information which needs to be gathered, different kinds of measurement which needs to be done. So, as what Margaret Beckley and Miran Kellner said once, we live in a culture that is crazy about numbers. We want standardization, we revere precision, and we aspire for control. The very ancient and dominant belief is that numbers are what is real, and if you can number it, you can make it real. Once it is real, it's yours to manage and control. We increasingly depend on numbers to know how we are doing for virtually everything. That's very true when it comes down to our processes also. In general, we say that, if you cannot measure what you're doing, you cannot manage or improve it. Measuring the product at various defined intervals gives an insight of how an application is actually being built up and warns us of any risks which you might face. Now, in the IT world, measuring is distinctly done for three specific reasons. One is from an application progress, or a process analysis purpose, or for an evaluation purpose. The need to measure arises to make sure that the development of the application is in the right track and to rectify the deviations or decisions to make sure that the set targets are met. Now, this is from an application perspective. Measuring gives us the data of where we currently stand and enables us to improvise and evolve. This is from a process perspective. When measuring the skills and attributes of the team, you identify the gaps as well as new areas to explore and help grow the team. This is from a team building and evaluation front. Today, the testing team is measured for the quality of releases and their adherence to schedule. The data represented by the testing team, along with the thoughts and recommendation, influences a go or no-go decision. So where does these data come from? How are the recommendations backtraced? That's what Matrix can help you in doing also. Now here are some of the other questions that we in testing normally come across very often. And I'm sure most of you would have faced these questions somewhere in your line, or probably would have even asked these questions. Like, how long will it take to test? How bad or good is the product? Will we be able to complete testing on time? How much effort went into the product? Or how much more do we need to? And my favorite, how many bugs still remain in the product? Now, having Matrix will help us give a lot of meaningful answers to these questions. Now, we know that we need to measure to make sure that we have control over improvising ourselves, controlling the flow of the process, as well as evolving ourselves for evaluation purposes. Now, what do you measure? And how do you actually measure it, or how do you actually present it out? To realize that, we first have to know for what purpose we are measuring. That is the reason why a matrix must exist. Simply put, a matrix is a structured representation of data collected, analyzed, and presented for a specific goal. Matrix provides a more factual and quantitative basis for describing how we are doing and what you can do better. Without at least some basic metric information, all your discussions on improvement, where we currently stand, are just subjective evidences, perceptions, and guesses. There is no quantified data to substantiate what you're discussing about. That is why we need a matrix. Now, generating a matrix is not something which is done completely automatically. There's a proper process defined which needs to be followed to generate a matrix. And people are given ownerships for the different areas within the matrix. And in short, it requires time. When you say time in today's world, it means money. So before we actually go ahead and start implementing a set of matrix into our process, we need to find out whether it actually makes sense, looking at cost of a matrix versus the benefit of the matrix. Normally you would have a predefined set of people who are in charge of managing the project, the scope management or issue management. Managing matrix, however, is more under the discretion of the project manager and the overall organizational needs and cultures. When you think about project matrix, ideally you should start by generating matrix that are required by the organization, and then add matrix that have lower cost effort and more potential benefits. So how do you actually define a matrix, or how do you actually go about generating matrix? That's what we will try to go through from this slide onwards. So when you are identifying a matrix, you need to first take into consideration the audience. This is required because when we analyze and decide for the matrix, some of the stakeholders who actually go through the end result may not be technical. For example, let's say in your matrix you come out and say runtime errors and exceptions are being faced up. From a technical perspective, people might understand it off. But from a business perspective, it might not give too much of sense. However, if you put out if you decipher it in a way saying that there is a potential of loss of time as well as performance degradation because of some errors, people will start understanding the impact of it. So taking your audience into consideration is very much required when you decipher the matrix and put it across. The next is understanding for what purpose the matrix is being captured. Is it from an application perspective, process perspective, or evaluation perspective, as we had described earlier. And if you're always starting off, if you're in the process of introducing matrix into your system, initially start off with matrix which are easy for data collections and capture. Break up the matrix into what and all are being captured, or the matrix attributes. Provide a definition of the matrix. What is this matrix for, and what are the benefits you will have out of it? define a benchmark for the matrix. You may need a buy-in from other teams over here for it to be a realistic figure and compare it against industry standards. Identify what are the attributes that should be collected. Do not try to overload the matrix initially itself, because as and when the matrix evolves, you will have more information requests coming in. So keep it simple at the beginning and then slowly start evolving on it. Now, when you're trying to define a matrix, it's a good thing to give a small identification for each of the attributes or definition for each of the attributes as to why is it that you're capturing this information and what would be gained from it. In certain cases, some of the data which is being collected might need to be used in combination with some other data, in which case it would be good to provide a small definition about how this actually is going to gel together. The next is the structure and organize the matrix. It's always good to provide a summary or a small snapshot of the matrix at the beginning and get into the details of it. You then proceed to creating a template with all the above information as well as instruction on how to populate the template. So once the template is ready, you then need to provide information about what are the data which needs to be captured and how is it that the template needs to be populated. Now, coming to the data collection and the data capture part, which is a major aspect of any matrix. When you're introducing a new matrix, make sure that a proper mechanism is present or defined to capture and collect data. Try to identify the easiest way possible to avoid introducing a major change to the existing work. If a change is required, always highlight it off with the need for it and what is the advantage that you would get in introducing this change into the existing process. Next is communicating it off with the team and letting them know the details about the matrix and why is it that we need to have this matrix. And who knows, probably the team might come up with a better idea in capturing some of the data since they do the day-to-day activities. Define proper verification points to ensure that proper data is collected. And make sure that the data is always collected into a central location and that you don't pull data across different reports or different files which are scattered across your system. Now the verification of the data and the analysis. Verify and make sure that the data collected is accurate. Calculate the matrix and compare against the benchmarkings that you had done earlier. Make sure that the matrix gives the right information and that no fabrication is done. Okay, and automate the calculation and derivation process as much as possible. Now, a matrix is always a double-edged sword. When presenting data, you can always be questioned on why are we in this state and why so late? What could we have done better earlier? Why did we not capture this earlier? However, this should never be a cause to fabricate the data and fall into the group of people who use metrics to statistically lie using matrix. Now, that's a new area which is being pursued, statistically lying using matrix. There's a study which is actually being done on that too. So be careful that you don't fall into that category as such. It is always better to divide the matrix into two sections, one being the summary or the dashboard, which gives you a highlight or the synopsis of what's happening, the other being the detailed matrix itself. The report should be precise and clear to the point. There should be no statement where people are required to infer details. Remember, never give an opening for people to assume things. Assumptions, all said and done, is always the mother of all disasters. Improvisation. As and when you start using the matrix, the need will arise to include more data or reduce more information from the matrix. This process of improving the matrix should always be handled carefully. One of the suggestions that I have is make sure that you split it off into two areas of the requirements. One is the must-have data and the need for the same, and good to have data and the impact if it is not included. Back up both of these with the amount of time required to collect and create the matrix, as well as the amount of manual intervention required and its impact, along with its benefits. You can then weigh the benefits against the time spent, which is nothing but your cost versus benefits earlier, and decide whether or not you need to proceed with the required modifications. Now, looking at some of the industry standards, now we'll just go through some of the predefined standards which are dominantly used in today's industry from a testing perspective. Some of these might be used, some of these might not be used, but I'm sure that you would come across these when you're discussing about matrix anywhere. One is cost of finding a defect in testing, which is your total effort spent on testing against your defects found in testing. The test case effectiveness. This defines the effectiveness of the test cases, which is measured in the number of defects found. It's nothing but the number of defects detected using test cases into 100 against the total number of defects detected. Effort variances, actual effort estimate, actual efforts minus estimated efforts against the estimated efforts into 100. Schedule variance, which is the actual duration minus the estimated duration against your estimated duration multiplied by 100. Now, there are a lot like this. You have a schedule slippage, requirement stability index, requirements creep. These are just a few of the metrics that are being generally followed in the testing services. Now, this does not mean that you are limited to using what is being followed. If you always feel that there is a scope for improvising, or you need a particular matrix to be introduced into your system, you can do that. However, whenever you have a thought about introducing a new matrix, it's always best to have a discussion with your superiors or somebody higher up, if feasible, just to make sure that such a matrix is not already available in your system, because it would be a waste of time if you're going to again redefine something which is already existing. Now, the next session is just an example of creating a matrix, or how to go about creating a matrix, or how you can be creative in defining a new matrix. Now, this was something which I had created in one of my projects, which was immensely helpful as it was a maintenance project. So this was one of the creative ways wherein, an example of a creative way of creating a matrix. So what I did over here was came up with a matrix which defined the health of a module or a product. So the objective which came up over here was because of the question that I kept getting off related to, is the product stable enough, or where are we with the stability? And the majority of the time, the answers what people give were from the top of their mind. Okay, this is what was the issue that we faced earlier. This is what is currently being done, but nothing was backed up. Now, providing these kind of feedbacks to the management is one thing, and coming up with a proper analysis of the module or project with basic mathematical calculations is another thing. Now, you can pass this on to the management and also to the stakeholders to provide a hypothetical figure of where we stand in the product. So the below example will help you understand how to exactly go about defining a matrix and how to present it out. Okay. Now, for this particular example of how to identify the health of a product, we need to have one of these two processes in place. Either the process of creating test cases and converting ad hoc related defects into test cases, or a proper defect tracking system where the severity of the defect is logged and mentioned. I personally prefer the second option. This is basically because the defect tracking system, I felt it to be better because the chances of ad hoc defects being converted into test cases are not very high. People normally miss that out. So, setting up the process. The first step to starting this process is that we provide weightages to the different severity levels within our defect tracking system. Now, for this example, I've just categorized the severity of the defects as critical, high, medium, and low, and I have assigned different weightages for each of these categories, as shown here, 8, 5, 3, and 1. Now, I basically take out the dump of our defect database. I take all the open defects and the closed defects, and the ones in between, like your as-is defects, deferred or postponed defects, known issues. One of the questions that normally people might have over here is, what is an as-is defect? These are basically low-level defects which the business are okay with, But from a QA side, there are still issues as such. Now, these are different from the known issues. Basically, known issues, as the name states, they are functional defects, which require major changes, but the business is okay with having the issue. So if the business is okay with having issues like the access issues or known issues, then why do we need to take it into consideration for our matrix? But from a QA perspective, a defect is still a defect, if it is open or even if they have said okay to it. Now, a functional issue, even though it might not have a business implication as such, it might have a downstream impact on other functionalities. Let's say, for example, if it's a small runtime error, or if it's something which is happening in the back end, you might not know whether it could lead to a memory leakage or a performance issue. So from a QA perspective, we definitely need to take these kind of defects into consideration. Now I just consolidate the whole list into an open set, and a closed set, and the total. Once I get that, then I apply the weightage onto these figures, which you see at the bottom section of the screen. So 13 open defects results in a weightage of 104. 75 closed defects results in a weightage of 600 for critical issues. So the total comes to about 704. Likewise, you do it for the rest of the categories of defects. Now, an ideal state of the defect is one wherein all the defects have been closed, wherein you have your closed section equal to your total section. So that becomes our benchmark to analyze the health of the product or the application, wherein the total is 1674, or the total weightage of the defects. Now, since that is not our case, the data that is deciphered for the open defects shows the actual weakness of the application. So in which case the weakness can be identified by calculating the percentage of the sum of open defects, which comes to about 18%. That shows you the weakness. From that you can now say, okay, the weakness, this application is 82% healthy and is about 18% weak. A simple way of putting across where we currently stand, taking into consideration all the defects. Now, the acceptable percentage of what the health should be is something which should be set by the company. However, in some cases, firms do say that about 80% or 85% should be good enough as long as all the critical and high defects are resolved. Personally, I would always like to set up the mark a little bit higher, saying that about 85 to 90% should be what we are aiming for, and leverage up to about 80 to 85% of acceptance, provided some criteria are met or certain conditions are met. So this helps us in setting ourselves for the next step which needs to be taken up. Now imagine if you're going for a no-go decision, or you want to decide whether to push the product out or what should we be doing from now onwards. This kind of an analysis will clearly show you where we currently stand, what are the areas which we need to improvise on, and if we are to release it at this state and we were going to follow up the releases with more enhancements and things of those kind, you can now prioritize and say, okay, we probably might need to look into some more aspects in this release itself and deprioritize some of the items from the next release. So your data along with your recommendations has an impact on the go no-go for this product, as well as of what needs to be done going further. Now that is what a matrix is all about. I hope that I've been able to give you all a proper understanding about why is that we need to measure, how is it that we can go about measuring it off, how is it that you can create a matrix, provide the proper details so that people are aware about why this data is being used and what the information is capable of. Now I will leave the session open for any question and answers if there is one. Mohini, over to you.
Thanks for the insightful presentation, Mr. Nathan. Let's quickly take up the questions now. Please read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to the commendable insights. Over to you, Mr. Nathan. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Samir?
Yes, I am.
Please take up the questions now.
Just give me a moment, everybody, while I just go through it. Okay, here's a question from Dhananjaya. How best can we use matrix in agile development methodology? Now that's a very good point. Given to the way the agile methodology works, wherein things are running off in iterations and the turnaround is done very quickly, what I would suggest is try to identify a matrix which requires the least amount of time in capturing data or as much as automatable as possible and implement that off. Now, if you look into what we just now talked about, for example, the health of a product or a module, you could even get that off into a module level. Since all the data is available within your defect tracking system, if you have a way of pulling that data out, you can automatically get the whole thing off done through Excel itself. It's just a matter of automating it off within Excel or putting up the data with logic within Excel. So similarly, I would suggest trying to find out an equally easy matrix which can be implemented for the agile part. Next one. Okay, how will matrix differ for game testing? Sridhar, I am a very avid gamer myself, but to be very frank with you, the gaming industry is something which is entirely different. I'm sure that a lot of the current matrix would still hold good, no matter what domain it is, whether it is gaming or whatever, mobile testing, any of those things. See, as long as testing is being done and data is being captured, some of these metrics will be helpful, some of them might not be helpful. For example, a requirement volatility, wherein your requirement keeps on changing, or a change request in an index or matrix, wherein the request keeps on changing. Those I feel are more towards the services company as such. However, if you are into a product company, or if you are into a gaming company which solely creates the game, you might not need to use those kind of metrics, right? However, your testing efficiency can definitely be implemented. Okay, somebody's asked about the answers and known issues, which I have explained earlier. Okay, what tools do you use to track all metrics you have suggested? Well, sadly, you don't have any predefined tools. because the matrix that you need is something which either you decide or your company decides. However, there are different ways wherein the data can actually be collected, like using SharePoint is one very good option. Using the forms within SharePoint, you can fill in the data and have the matrix automatically generated using the functionalities of SharePoint. Or if it's just a repository that you want, you could use any of the repository management systems. What are the various techniques for measurement? That's a very elaborate forum as such. This was asked by Nagalakshmi. See, the thing is, when you say techniques for measurement, it depends upon what you are measuring. See, in one case, we were talking about the defects. So you are measuring defects, right? So you could use your defect tracking system to measure your defects. Let's say if you're looking at the test case efficiency, you're looking about the test cases executed against the defects found, or the number of test cases executed. So if you have a method of tracking your execution status, like in HPQC, it becomes easier for you. Whereas if you are still using Excels or Word documents for your test case execution and status reporting, it becomes much more difficult. So the techniques of measuring actually differs from your matrix to matrix. Okay, here's an interesting question. What is the industry standard for test case creation per man hour? Well, that entirely depends upon the requirements. So if you're creating an end-to-end test case scenario or an end-to-end test case, you could take 1 day to create 1 test case. If your functionality is a very simple functionality, you could probably create about 50 test cases in 2 hours time. So it depends from a creation perspective as well as from an execution perspective. But on an average, I believe if it's a very more common normal scenario, an execution should be about 25 test cases per day per person. Okay, Balamurgan, how about the production bugs covered? So your escape defects can also be included into your product health, or you can actually do a gap analysis. Right, that would give you a place to introduce your production bugs back into your system for coverage. Okay, Jane, this is a good question. Matrix, are they really required in small organizations? What's stopping you? If you see an advantage of using it to put across some points, definitely use it. Like I said, see some of the questions that you would face, whether your organization is small or large, is things like, okay, where do we currently stand? Do you think we have finished testing completely? How long do you think it will take? Do you think we can finish off in the given set of time? Like for example, you're supposed to finish off testing by Friday. You have another 3 days with you. And you have about 200 test cases to execute. Having a capacity matrix, for example, would help you answer that question. Amit, okay, this is a good question. Does 18% weakness really give a picture to make the decision? See, Amit, this was just an example that I've taken up. However, see that 18% can further be split to show how much of critical defects are available and how much of high-level defects are available. Now, it is normally seen that people don't want to release a product out with any critical or high-level defects. Now, let's say, for example, you have this 18% weakness with you. You can take this out to your stakeholders and say, hey, you know what, we are 18% weak now. We have about this 5 critical defects and another 3 high-level defects. If we were to fix this and put in an additional effort, our 18% weakness would come down to, let's say, about 10% weakness with no critical or high-level defects present in the system. Don't you think that that would have an impact when you give that kind of a statistics to your stakeholders? Hope I've been helpful over there. How useful is matrix in startup scenarios? I guess it was the same thing as how useful it is in a small company as such. Can you elaborate requirement stability and requirement creep? Okay, let me just put back the screen wherein we were looking at this requirement stability and requirements creep. Okay, what is the requirement stability index? So it basically is nothing but okay, this is the industry standard formula. Okay, that's 1 minus total number of changes divided by the number of initial requirements. That is said to give you your requirements stability. The industry standard for requirements creep, or to measure your requirements creep, is the total number of requirements added and your total divided again by your number of initial requirements into 100. See, the requirement stability handles the changes in your requirement, right? Say, for example, you had about 35 business requirements which have been defined. Out of those 35 requirements which were defined, you are in your process of testing, and you see that halfway through about 10 of them, the requirement is changed, right? So that, analyzing that is what your requirement stability index does. Requirements creep, on the other hand, is the number of requirements which gets added into your scope, right? So if you were to put across a point to the stakeholders saying that, okay, you have had a requirement creep which has impacted your timelines, and that is one of the reasons why you measure requirements creep, right? How has it impacted your testing activities or your testing timelines? So take this requirements creep value, and what I would suggest is, along with that, you also put up a capacity planner. So your capacity planner should be something like, well, you can find it out in the net definitely, or you will have an idea about it yourself. A capacity planner basically is nothing but the number of test cases that a person can execute per day in your project. You take into consideration the number of resources you have, the number of days which is left for you to do. It will give you your capacity. I am in a position to execute this many test cases in the given time frame. Now, you also take into consideration what is pending to be done, in the sense, what are the pending test cases to be executed, which should include the test cases which has failed, as well as the test cases which has been blocked due to non-functional availability or due to some other defects earlier. Now, along with that, if you say we had to add up more test cases, our capacity initially itself was this much. Now, with the requirement creep of this much, our test cases or our capacity increased by about 150%, or increased by another 60%. We had to do a ramp up, which also involves effort and cost over there. So you combine these two metrics to put your point across to your management or to your stakeholders, wherever it is applicable. I'm assuming that was why the question came up about the requirements creep and requirement stability index. I hope that I have been able to answer that, at least give you an idea about what it is about. Okay, do we have some standard matrix in software testing? Yes, we have a lot of standards. Look anywhere in the net, you will find a series of standards. It depends upon what you want. Okay, what is the basis of choosing the weightage of critical as 8 by Premchand? Okay, see, the weightage, if you look into the concept of giving weightage to any particular defect or to any particular system, there are two things to it. One is you give more weightage to things which are more critical, or you want to highlight your point on one. The other thing is you yourself should have some kind of a understanding about what a low-level defect is and what a critical defect is. So if you are saying that my critical defect is 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, or on a scale of 1 to 5, if your lower-level defect is 1, then for me a critical defect on a scale of 1 to 5 is 8. Because it is critical. What are the various defect prediction tools and techniques? See, there is something called as a trend analysis, which should help you out over there, Mr. Srikanth. See, a trend analysis, basically, you have to fill in the data base, which is nothing but the number of functionalities which has been implemented against the total number of defects which you have found so far again to these functionalities, taking into consideration the complexity of the functionality. If we say that you are in a process of having 10 functionalities delivered to you, you have had only 3 functionalities delivered so far. These 3 functionalities have resulted in 10 defects, and the complexity of these 3 functionalities, let's say, are medium. You will get a trend to that based on each release or each iteration. This is what has been released, the total number of defects which you've received, and the total number of fixes that you've received. So you should be able to plot up a graph over that. Taking that as your baseline, you should be able to predict what is going to happen when the remaining 7 functionalities are added to it, whose complexity is much more in nature. I hope I have given you a heads up about what is that you can actually do. Okay. Jane is asked, can you explain what traceability matrix is and how is it related with matrix? Okay. See, a traceability matrix is nothing but it's your requirements being traced through your test cases and defects to make sure that all the said functionalities or expectations of the business has been addressed both via delivery, via validation, and via sign-off. Okay, what is the difference between schedule variance and effort variance? Schedule variance is time-based. Effort variance is your personal effort, in the sense, let's say for example, you are looking at releasing the product off by, let's say, 15th of this month. The variance resulted in the release happening off on 18th. That's a schedule variance. Your effort variance was you were planning to have this many hours of work done, or your capacity, another place where your capacity can be used. Your capacity was this much, but the end result was your capacity had to be increased to, let's say, from 300 to 700. How do we ensure that we have chosen the right matrix for the project? If at the time of defining the matrix, you have not defined the benefits of using that matrix properly, then any matrix that you use is not something that you need. Like I said, when you're defining a matrix, always be sure about 2 things. One is, what is the benefit that you're getting out of doing this particular exercise? Second, make sure that this benefit is accepted by the stakeholders. Right? These 2 gets answered, it makes sense. These 2 are not answered, it does not make sense. Okay. Here's a question. Are these matrix used only for internal purposes, or will it be shared with the clients as well? What's there to hide? Normally in your SLAs, you have to be as transparent as possible within your clients to build up your relationship with the clients. Right? Let's say, for example, you do a matrix to show that you decipher that you have been doing a great job or beyond your expectations. Would you want to share it with your clients? If the answer is yes, then if your company rule does not go against it, definitely share it with your clients. If your company policies or the SLA has strict statements put into it, stating that you should not be sharing any of the IP tools to your clients, then you should not. However, the chances are very slim that you would have some kind of a restriction over that. You should be able to share your metrics with your clients because the clients themselves would have imposed the use of metrics. Okay. Okay. Here's a person who's having an issue wherein a majority of the major blocked bugs are found towards the end of the cycle. Is there any matrix that we can implement to ensure that such issues are identified at the beginning of the cycle? Two things. One is, like I said earlier, your trend analysis should give you a very good idea about what to expect in the future, and I would definitely recommend using that out. For example, if you're saying that with a low complexity functionality, I've already identified about 5 critical defects, which are showstoppers and resulted in a lot of blockages, I am actually a little bit worried about what a high complex functionality is going to be done. You can enforce having high complex functionalities being delivered to you before the medium complexity functionalities. And all the best is what I would say. Okay, again, here's another question wherein they are working in a small size company and their project size is about 1 month of testing and sometimes less. Like I said earlier, try to identify places. This is something similar to what you could do with the Agile or the option given to the Agile methodology. Identify processes which can be, identify metrics that can be easily populated without too much of effort. The more it can be automated, use those kind of metrics over there. Apart from the defect count, what are the other ways to know the health of a product or the product efficiency? See, the thing is, you need something measurable to identify something or to decipher something, right? So when you talk about the health, there are only 2 things that you can do. Either find out via the weakness or find out via the strength. Now, when it comes down to how a product actually is or an application is, or the health of an application, if you're going through the approach of finding what and all is working fine, what and all the requirements that have been working fine, that will give you a figure, but is that figure true? Because these functionalities, even though they are working properly, will have defects associated to it. So that was the reason why we took the defect approach. Okay, taking the test cases is another approach. But the problem with test cases is, what if there are ad hoc defects into your system which has not been converted into test cases, right? Or defects which have been raised up due to NFRs or non-functional requirements like stress testing or performance testing. Those will be missed out in your test cases. So that is the reason why you take up something which is which has all the data available. So since we went to the weakness approach, for us a repository of the weakness is our defect database. Hence we took that up. Okay, here's somebody who's asked a question which is entirely outside this topic, but I'll give him an answer. Is there any industry standard estimation techniques? Please look into that. There are a lot of techniques here, functional point techniques. There are a lot. So I would suggest you do some research and you'll get your answer over there. Okay, here's a question. Can matrix be devised as a KPI is defined? If you see that it can be done and you see a value add over there, do it. That's what I would say. Okay, can you please suggest parameters for matrix to measure test case productivity? Now, I would not suggest finding out the productivity of a particular test case. If you want that, and if you're using a HPQC, it's much easier. You can have all the defects which were raised to a particular test case mapped to it, and you can see how many test cases that how many defects that test case is actually raised. However, I would put it across in saying how productive your test cases were, wherein you look into the total number of test cases you have against your total number of defects which has been identified. That will give you your efficiency ratio. Can we measure the tester's productivity using matrix? Number of defects detected using test cases into 100 divided by total number of defects detected normally gives you a test case efficiency. Now, using that, you can probably identify the effectiveness of the test case, or rather the person who created the test case, not of the person who's executed it. So the tester's productivity cannot be measured individually as such. However, the team's productivity can be measured. Okay, there's a question. Does the defects with status answered consider the matrix? I'm not very sure about what answered means. Does it mean that it's been closed, or is it in verified state, or was that a clarification that was asked? Please be more specific about that. Can you mention some metrics which would be useful in a product company? Any of the matrices can be used within a product company, like your test case effectiveness, your schedule deviations, effort deviations, can be used within a product company. See, the thing is, like I said again, first thing what you need to do is try to analyze why do you need this metrics, for what purposes. Are you trying to come up with a metrics to analyze the progress of the application, or are you trying to come up with a metrics to analyze your process, or is it to evaluate your team? Define that first, and that will give you the matrix that you need to use. It doesn't matter whether it's a product company or it's a services company or even a consulting company. It doesn't matter. You address one of these questions, you will see whether you need a matrix or not. Okay, what is the use of breaking the defects in different categories when the health of the product is determined by the total defects? Good question. So you don't see at this particular point, the question arises, do we actually need a matrix to identify the health, right? Having 10 low-level defects and having 5 critical level defects, if you're going just by the total count, okay? I have a product which has only 5 defects, and I have a product which has only 10 defects. The one with the 5 are 5 critical defects, and the one with 10 are 10 low-level defects. Which do you think is more stable? Right? I hope that gives you the answer. Okay, does this matrix really reach the top management of the company, and how it helps to increase the revenue? See, matrix which needs to reach the top level will reach the top level. That's why I said the stakeholders. Identify the stakeholders. Who is your stakeholder? In a majority of cases, these majority of our testing matrix that we develop does not see beyond your QA head. Okay. In some cases, it might go beyond that. Normally, it is when something good has happened, right? Or something extraordinary needs to be showcased up. However, the data collected from different teams does reach the top level management, right? That is from a reporting perspective. So matrix, like you said, like you see, a matrix is something which is like a pyramid. You start broadly at the bottom, and it reduces and reduces. The data is deciphered, and some other document is created from it, and at the end it becomes one single document. So your data from the matrix might influence some data within some other documents. It might not go as is, or it could go. Depends upon the organizational needs and requirements. Okay, I guess with that, I'm stopping off with the question and answer session. I hope all of you have been able to learn at least something out of this session.
Thanks, Mr. Samir, for your session on measurement and metrics, the need and how to implement them. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for the support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you.